Why do men only confess their love after you've already disappeared? Why does silence, soft, cold, sovereign, cut deeper than screaming ever could? Some women weaponize it, others stumble into it. But the truth is universal. When a woman walks away without explanation, the masculine ego crumbles. And in that void, he feels the 5 things he swore he never would. 1. The collapse of the untouchable ego. Why do some men only realize your worth after you've stopped waiting? Because absence is the one force that ego cannot conquer. When you stay, he sees you through the filter of control. When you speak, he listens only to win. But when you vanish, truly, silently, the mask shatters. Suddenly, he's no longer in charge of how the story ends. The ego is wired for certainty. It craves predictable reactions, emotional formulas, easy victories. But when you give him nothing to push against, no tears, no anger, no farewell, his power dissolves into uncertainty. And uncertainty is unbearable to the masculine psyche that spent years guarding against vulnerability. He believed your love was inevitable, that no matter what he did, you'd orbit back. But now your absence has become a mirror, forcing him to face something far more terrifying than losing you, never truly having you at all. Silence rewrites history. It turns the chase backwards. He starts remembering all the ways he dismissed your voice, minimized your presence, and confused possession with love. And suddenly, he's haunted by echoes you never spoke. Because nothing bruises the male ego like a woman who disappears without needing to prove her value. You've felt this before, haven't you? The magnetic shift that happens when you stop performing worth and start embodying it. He doesn't say it out loud, but the collapse has begun. It starts with confusion, then curiosity, then madness. And by the time he realizes what you meant to him, he's left staring into the space your silence carved open. Imagine yourself as the moon, pulling the tide of his emotions without lifting a finger. The gravitational pull of mystery is stronger than the push of presence. Leave quietly and watch his ego scream. Picture his world spinning just slightly off its axis, not because of what you said, but because of what you refused to. Your silence was the first time he truly heard you. But silence doesn't just destroy illusions. It reveals something deeper. It doesn't only threaten the ego, it threatens the myth. And that myth is what we confront next. 2. The myth of her replaceability. Why do men believe they can always replace her until she's already gone? Because modern masculinity has been sold a lie. That femininity is abundant, interchangeable, and forever available. As long as she stays within reach, she becomes background noise. He scrolls past her soul, swiping on fantasies, blind to the fact that real feminine energy doesn't duplicate, it disappears. When a woman walks away silently, she ruptures this myth. She ceases to be one of many and becomes the one who could not be copied. His memory replays her essence not as a list of traits, but as a singular energy. The way she listened when he didn't speak. The way her absence makes his entire world feel thinner. He looks for her in others and finds fragments, echoes, imposters. But the original? Gone. Unrecreated. Unreachable. You see, most men don't mourn a woman when she's close. They mourn her when her energy becomes an unsolvable puzzle, an empty room that no one else fills the same. That's when panic sets in. The subtle dread that he didn't just lose a woman. He lost something sacred, and it wasn't taken from him. He drove it away with indifference, forgetting that not every woman comes back. Not every goodbye is spoken aloud. Not every loss leaves a traceable wound. Maybe you've silenced yourself too long, waiting to be seen, waiting for him to notice the details that made you unforgettable. But power returns the moment you realize his regret is no longer your responsibility to witness. Let him unravel without you. Let him search for your energy in the hollow touch of others. That ache in his chest, that's the ghost of your irreplaceability. Visualize yourself like a rare painting removed from the gallery, no longer on display, no longer available for interpretation. He stands in front of the empty wall, stunned that he ever believed art could be replaced. She became unforgettable the moment she stopped trying to be remembered. But what happens after the ego collapses and the myth dissolves? What emotion comes roaring in when all defenses fall quiet? The one thing he swore he never felt. And that's where we go next. If this already stirred something in you, drop your words in the comments and share the moment you knew your silence was more powerful than your words. 3. The rise of repressed emotion. Why do some men only feel their emotions once you're no longer around to witness them? Because while you were present, your presence absorbed the blow of his emotional immaturity. But your silence? It becomes a mirror, and that mirror doesn't lie. Masculine energy often buries emotion under achievement, detachment, or conquest. Vulnerability feels like exposure, and exposure feels like weakness. So what happens when the emotional regulator, you, vanishes without warning, without closure, without chaos? The buried grief rises like a flood. The silence forces him inward, and what he finds there isn't anger or even pride. It's sorrow. Sorrow for the moments he missed while pretending not to care. Sorrow for the softness he mocked, for the love he mishandled. Because when a woman walks away in dignity, she doesn't just leave a space, she activates a reckoning. Suddenly, every suppressed emotion he thought he escaped by staying numb returns with brutal clarity. The nights he ignored your voice, the days he failed to choose you, the tenderness he rejected because it made him feel something real. This grief isn't immediate. It unfolds slowly, often masked by distraction. He dates someone new, tries to move on, fills the space with noise. But one night, alone, unguarded, he hears a laugh that sounds like yours, smells a scent that brings you back, and grief claws its way out of repression like smoke through the cracks of a burning room. He may not have cried in front of you, but he's crying now, and no one is there to comfort him, least of all, you. You've seen this before. The delayed reaction, the sudden flood of emotion months later. It's not weakness, it's consequence. A man who avoids depth must one day drown in what he refused to feel, and your absence was the permission his psyche needed to finally confront what his ego could not. So let him cry where you can't hear him. Let him ache where you no longer reach. You are not responsible for carrying the weight of emotions he refused to face while you were loving him. Visualize him kneeling in a room he once walked through carelessly, now haunted by the silence of everything left unsaid. What he refused to feel beside you, he now feels in the echo of your absence. But emotional collapse is not the end. It's the threshold. Because what comes after grief is regret. Not the kind he admits out loud, the kind he relives in secret. And that is the next revelation. 4. The obsession with the unforgiven moment. Why do men become obsessed with one specific moment after it's too late to fix it? Because when a woman leaves silently, she doesn't give him the comfort of a final script. There's no scene to replay, no argument to analyze, no closure to distort into control. Instead, there's a single moment, often insignificant to you, that his mind cannot release. It could be the way you looked at him that last night, the tone in your voice when you said nothing at all, a door closing, a glance held too long. And because you didn't explain yourself, that moment becomes the symbol of everything he failed to understand. It's no longer just a memory. It's a wound without a name. This is where obsession begins, in the psychological vacuum created by silence. He replays that moment in his mind with surgical precision. Did you know you were leaving then? Did you stop loving him in that exact breath? Could he have changed if he had only asked the right question, given the right apology? But the feminine mystique has no commentary track, and your refusal to clarify becomes the very thing that drives him mad. You see, most men can handle rejection. What they cannot handle is ambiguity. They are trained to conquer, to define, to contain. But when a woman leaves without permission, without explanation, she transcends containment. She becomes myth, and myths are not solved. They're worshipped, feared, or cursed. Maybe you've done this. Maybe you walked away from someone who thought he had time. And now, years later, he still revisits the exact second he realized you were no longer his. That's not nostalgia. It's a psychological haunt. And it is one of the greatest consequences of your silence. You must understand this. You don't need to seek revenge. Your absence created a question he'll never be able to answer. And some questions undo men far more than any goodbye ever could. Visualize yourself as a page ripped from the final chapter of a story he thought he was writing. He keeps flipping through, hoping it reappears. But it never does. She left no trace, only a moment he could never forget. And while the masculine soul obsesses over the past, there's one final force that begins to take root deep in the psyche, the most dangerous one, the one that turns longing into awakening. And that is what we explore in the next chapter. 5. The erotic awakening of absence. Why does a man feel the most intense, almost spiritual attraction only when the woman he once ignored has vanished? Because desire thrives not in possession, but in distance, and the feminine silence, ripe with meaning, mysterious in its departure, does not merely trigger loss. It seduces the unconscious into awakening. This isn't the kind of attraction rooted in lust or novelty. It's a darker, deeper longing born from a space he didn't know existed inside him. A hunger not for your body, but for the presence he never truly understood until it was gone. Most men don't realize they're attracted to depth until it disappears. They crave stimulation, comfort, control. But when a woman who once embodied unconditional presence leaves without ceremony, her absence becomes erotic, not in a superficial way, but in a way that stirs the archetypal masculine to its core. You see, to the masculine unconscious, the feminine is not just a partner. She is the mirror of his soul's unfinished work. She is mystery, chaos, the unknown, and she is the one force that demands he evolve or suffer. When you were available, he mistook your presence for permanence. But now that you're unreachable, your essence becomes symbolic. He doesn't just miss you. He longs for the version of himself he could have become with you. That ache in his chest, it's the death of potential. The erotic pull he feels is not just for your skin, but for your silence. Because that silence now contains every unspoken word, every withheld apology, every moment he thought he had more time. He becomes haunted not just by who you were, but by who he wasn't. And this is where the alchemy begins. Jung wrote that wholeness does not come from suppressing the unconscious, but from confronting it. Your absence confronts him with everything he ran from: his fear of intimacy, his lack of emotional presence, his failure to choose love over pride. And suddenly, what was once ignored becomes sacred. You become a symbol, not of the woman who left, but of the feminine he denied within himself. You've seen this transformation before. The man who never looked twice now can't look away. The one who thought he could do better, now realizing you were the better. But it's not about revenge. It's about recognition. You were never asking to be chosen. You were inviting him to awaken, and he failed the test. Maybe you've waited for this before. Waited for the moment he'd see you clearly, choose you fully, love you honestly. But here's the truth. Sometimes the deepest love a man discovers is the love he can never touch again. And that ache, that erotic ache, is yours now. Not as a weapon, as a crown. Visualize yourself as a flame he tried to contain, now burning in a temple he cannot enter. He watches, reverent and undone, by the light he thought would always wait for him. She became his deepest desire the moment she chose to be unreachable. The story doesn't end in heartbreak. It begins in recognition, but not his, yours. Recognition of your power, your value, your silence. Recognition that you were always the key, not to his awakening, but to your own. And while he lingers in longing, you rise in sovereignty. But the journey isn't over, because while men unravel in your absence, a different question emerges. What happens when a woman no longer needs to leave, because she no longer enters places that require her to shrink in the first place? Recap of the 5 psychological revelations. He didn't feel your worth until your silence shattered the illusion of control, until the echo of your absence replaced the noise of your compliance. He believed you could be replaced, until the void left by your departure made every imitation feel lifeless, hollow, and without fragrance. He couldn't cry while you were near, so your distance became the doorway through which all his buried grief rose like ghosts, demanding recognition. He clung to a single forgotten moment, obsessively, because you left no closure, only the sharp edge of mystery and meaning he'll never unravel. He now aches for the soul of you, not the body he once touched, but the light he can no longer reach. Because your absence awakened what his ego could never grasp. There is a silence that is not empty, but holy. A silence that is not absence, but a return, back into the sacred center of your feminine sovereignty. In a world that teaches you to explain yourself, to shrink for love, to earn what you already are, this silence is rebellion. It is erotic, not because it seduces, but because it refuses to perform. It dismantles illusion. It rips the mask from the ego and reveals what was never true love. Only the comfort of your availability. When you walk away without explanation, you are not punishing him. You are resurrecting yourself. The collapse he feels is not cruelty, it's consequence. His obsession, his grief, his awakening, all of it is the price of witnessing your radiance too late. And that is not your burden to bear. You are not here to fix the unconscious. You are here to embody what no man can access through possession alone. You are the myth he cannot finish. You are the key he threw away while the door was still open. And now, you return, not to him, but to yourself. As Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Let him feel the storm your silence left behind. Let him chase the echo that will never speak again. Because your love was not weak. It was simply too real for the version of him that met you. And now, your sacred work begins. Not in proving your value, but in protecting it. Your silence isn't emptiness. It is the sound of you choosing you. What part of you is still waiting to be broken, just to be seen? Subscribe to Jung Mind, where your shadow speaks and your soul finally listens.